Notice whether or not you are able to maintain a connection to that single building block. And if not, then can you ask yourself what then needs to happen in order for you to be able to concentrate on that single moment in time which builds into the experiences that you have. Now, what is it that happens to you? What happens to your eyes? What happens to your ears? What happens to your breathing? What happens to your tongue? To your body's posture? To the skin? In order to maintain the concentration. Is it possible for you to notice how all of the senses of the body are actually involved in this contemplation? And if you can notice that, then is it possible for you to make a stronger connection through decision? So all of the possibilities, all of those possibilities begin to fall away, and it just becomes the one. But that one represents it all. Can you notice how fine your awareness is? How concentrated your effort. And that within its simplicity is the depth that we want to work with when we are working with our meditation practice. We want to be able to see from that depth the building block that makes up all that is your body, all that is your breath, all that is your mind. All that is beyond the mind, so that then we eliminate distraction. And you can open your eyes gently or keep them closed. Now, what exists within that? Within that single building block. Can you describe that for yourself? What exists inside that? And not have the description come through a dialogue from the mind, but have it come through all of your sensory experience. So what does it feel like? What does it sound like? What does it taste like? Now within this one, we find all. So that means all interest, all enthusiasm, all sensation, all understanding. And what that translates to is the ability to be completely enthralled, completely engaged and absorbed within that action which is occurring from that single building of block of building. And if it's not possible, if there's distraction or if there's boredom, wandering, then this is a strength which must be developed within the concentration. But not concentration coming from your eyes or even coming from the mind alone. Concentration which is encapsulating all that you are, which is giving you access to all aspects of your life, every single area. So then how you do one thing is then how you will do all things. And because you're working from the very depth of that which is building all of those things, it is that subtle that it can be applied to as many differences as you wish it to be, with the exact same equanimity and intensity and intelligence and understanding. So it's working on being very forthcoming with yourself about what it is that you are doing inside there. What authentically interests you and is serving then your developmental goals, and what is not serving you but you still have interest in. And then you just simply weigh it. And it's often yes or no. Meditation can be used to strengthen the yes, strengthen that which is in line with who you are and your developmental goals, and then help to let go of all that is no longer needed. It can feel not easy. Like when you hold on to something, it's actually quite amazing how much effort it takes, all the complex actions involved in order to let go of whatever vessel you might be holding on to on the physical, like a cup, and then move your hand away. But that complexity is so well worn and understood. So as babies, as a child, we attempt to hold on to something and it's not easy. We attempt to let go of it and it's also not easy, but time and time and time again. But the same thing exists for the mind. It's that same complexity of simple movement, the dexterity that we create within the mind. And this challenge is increased by whatever might be inside the vessel, and if you really like it. So if it's tantalizing to the taste buds, it might be harder to put down, whatever that may be. And I am talking about meditation. So all of those moments that you wander, just simply bring yourself back. But the question is how? And the answer is always right there within the most subtle of subtle experience, that is that one building block. That's always how. Just the one, which speaks to it all. And then if we focus on that one, that single point, but not again from the gaze, but from everything that makes up your being, everything which makes up this human being, then we have full capacity of concentration working. Then we get an opportunity to go through more quickly the exercise of letting go and strengthening. Saying no and yes. Now the good thing is that the practice of meditation doesn't have the same grays that exist within daily life. So there's all these very, very fine lines within life that you might say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Meditation doesn't work that way. It's simply yes, no. Yes, this is correct. No, you don't need it anymore. Doesn't mean it's incorrect, it's just not needed. So now that is the practice ground to strengthen the sensation relationship to all of that gray. Do you know what I mean? Because that gray, which sometimes confuses the individual, is a very specific sensation that sparks a slight panic inside of, I'm not sure if I'm making the right decision. It's dull, but it's there. Or it's strong, it's sharper, and that's what creates the anxiety sensation. This I don't know, which then creates the hectic movements, the reactiveness. So then meditation becomes an action of strengthening the resolve and commitment to that the one has to a single point of origin that's not found outside of oneself. Because this is another well-trodden path. Oh, I'll go ask this person, I'll go ask that person. Even when it comes to meditation. The greater ability that we have just to simply answer our own questions based upon the research that we do. And that research comes in so many ways. You all have your unique way. Bringing life to the possibility that there is times when someone goes up and there's times when someone goes down. There is that possibility that there is a high time and a low time. But within that possibility of high and low, there's also a great possibility to maintain equanimity between it all, through it all. And that comes from specific ways of seeing that which you are experiencing. So meditation could be a great time spent quietly with yourself, or it could be very boring depending on how you see it. It could be the sweetest of nectar, or it could be the most intense challenge. But this is directly reflecting the experience of life. So if you are incredibly good with navigating your life, then meditation should be also quite easy to navigate. If you are not so good at navigating your life, meditation is your best friend ever, because that's what it does, quietens everything down. So that then there's calm water with the perfect breeze that's taking you along. And we want to become ideally very practical about it. So again, you're being very realistic and real with where you are within your mental experience, within your attitudes, with your fears, with your strengths, and start working with them head-on, ideally, as head-on as possible, and taking them one by one, or 2 by 2, or 3 by 3, depending on how you do it. But consistency is the key. And the reason why I bring that up is because there's, again, this direct correlation between what's happening in life and what's happening in meditation. So if I wish to speak to you about meditation, we actually have to speak about your life in one shape or form, because that is directly going to influence the meditation that I'm teaching you. The more calm and sweet the mind, then the deeper the meditation. The deeper and sweet the meditation, then the more beautiful life. It's funny how that works. But then within that, there's the truth that needs to be heard and understood. Which I think is great. I think that there's probably lots of directions that a conversation like this can go within one's mind. And one is acceptance, which is a very old concept, but it's very, very related to the experience of meditation, the actual experience of meditation, which is absorption, to the point where there's no distractions of any kind, meaning you do not feel anything, you do not hear anything, you do not smell anything, you do not taste anything, you do not see anything, completely absorbed. So in order for that to happen, there is an acceptance that this is exactly the way that my life is, and genuinely be okay with that. And I'm just talking about while you're sitting, nothing else. You don't have to do it any other hour in the day, just here when you're sitting. But during this time, everything, and I mean everything, authentically is okay. Accepting the sensation of the body until it dissolves, the rhythm of the breath until it dissolves. So now imagine that. This is a large piece of human challenge, not feeling accepted. So if we start from the single block of building within and accept ourselves, and then watch it influence, completely accepting ourselves for who we are and what we're doing just in that time in meditation. No other commitment to do anything, just that time. But then just like me picking up this cup, I'm becoming increasingly better at picking it up and letting it go. until it becomes effortless, no thinking necessary. See what I mean? So these old cultures who've brought forth some of these concepts, they're very much steeped in understanding and intelligence. And these concepts are developed not through thinking about it, but through actually living and doing it, living through it, and thinking, contemplating. But not just one, many, many, many for hundreds of years, thousands of years, one by one by one by one, before they can say, yeah, I think that this is correct. Acceptance is a valid experience to have on the path to authentic meditation experience or practice. And to me, what's profound is that I don't even have to tell you that. If you just simply take on the practice yourself, it will just simply happen. And you'll come up with that word yourself. And that's how you know it works. That if things are occurring outside of direct influence, so then I guess, why do you need me sitting here? It's also beneficial to connect to someone who you suspect may know with confidence about whatever topic it is that you're working with, whether it be meditation or any other contemplative practice. Gain understanding and insight, and then apply it. And if the application is successful, then all of the understanding of what we are communicating will just simply get grounded inside you. And then you'll inevitably go somewhere and do something else and be away for a while, and then maybe even come back. But then as you go, you really apply that information. And then when you come back, then you get a new set of direction, which then you can apply again. This has been a really old, long relationship. And that's how we create accountability. So the West is so young when it comes to these kinds of ways of communicating. But the only way that something is proven is if it works inside an individual, separate from direct instruction. It has to land and be able to be applied, simulated into that individual's own experience, and then expressed in their own words, in their own time, in their own reality. So you can see how it's very much focused on you as the individual. So it's your application and your relationship to the experience that you're having inside. So what comes up and pushes against you, whether it be fear or doubt or whatever it is that you're working with, and through, then it's your relationship to that and the action that you put forth to dissolve it. And that's the only way that meditation or any other wisdom tradition technique can be proven without a shadow of a doubt to work. But it's kind of a very tight loop, because it cannot be proven to work unless you take on the technique and apply it. So the only way it can be proven is from the inside, but the only way you can prove it from the inside is if we do it. So both revolve around you as the individual. So again, we have to be very honest with ourselves at the stage of development that we're in, to say, I'm here, but then not to have done anything about that. But saying, why am I here? But then not to have done anything about that. But to use the question, why am I here? Gain the answer and then apply yourself to the solution. Again, I'm talking about meditation. Why am I here staring at my eyelids right now? Stuck there. Or why am I here looking at this yellow dot when all of that should be dissolved? Or why am I here hearing that sound? Or why am I here feeling the ache in my body? Which is then directly applied to, why am I here feeling so angry? Why am I here feeling so sad? Why am I here? Any questions? I believe that this is actually a harder talk to listen to. It's not as easy to listen. Hello, good sir.
Hello back. The one building block, the question is, when I sit, there was beingness and stillness and emptiness. And the one building block for me, from my experience, was just a witnessing of beingness. That's all I could see. Now was that two things. One, was it my mind, as opposed to all the integrity of all experience within the body, the breath, the body, the mind, the senses, all coming focused, or it was just my mind having that experience?
That's a very good question. And the answer is, are you sure that what you saw and felt was the building block?
Yes.
Well, then I think you have the answer. But then that leads to another answer, and to another answer, and to another answer. So it would be simple if that was the end of the conversation you and I are having. Well, I think that it is in a lot of ways. But then you have to dissolve that also. So if that what you are witnessing at the moment in time is the building block of all that is created, but that is based upon the capacity of the mind to conceive what that is. So it's the most expanded form of anything that we have universally, really. So that is the function of it, is that it creates an identity and then it dissolves. That identity dissolves. But then it rebuilds again as an identity, and then it dissolves.
Incrementally.
Yeah.
So I guess for me it was just a very small, not the whole cosmos. It was just a small version of that.
Yeah.
As I sit here, I can still be there.
So that's why the answer is right. The answer is actually yes. You told yourself yes. So that what you see is actually the capacity, to your capacity. That is the block that builds. And then that becomes the focal point. And whether it is the mind or it is something else, the mind itself is engaging in it. And it's becoming absolutely secure in that.
Resting in it.
That it's completely okay because you've requested for all of this to happen, the dissolve, the acceptance, all of that. And this is then what is revealed. So if that is what is revealed, then that's actually the depth which you are able to connect and understand.
I do. So do the building blocks for all people in meditation would be different then?
One, on increased levels of subtlety.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I guess the real answer, or the real question, it's not even a question, it's observation, is the fact that, as you said earlier, in order to do this, you have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to put in the work. You have to approach this as a science
mm-hmm.
and experience it for yourself, this path of meditation, and in that experience you will find your answers. So
100%.
Really, this Wednesday night I want to come on Wednesday. I like the chanting and I like seeing you, and it's really great.
Yeah.
But
you must do the work in between.
That's right.
You can still come Wednesdays. I wasn't kicking you all out at that moment.
Good. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I understand a
mm-hmm.
little bit now.
Yeah, a science. That's exactly it. I think there's more questions.
I had an experience early this year where I'm going to call it synchronicity, where I was paying a lot of attention. Well, it all started when I was just grateful to be alive and to actually still have arms and legs and be able to breathe, etc. And then being grateful for everything that I had to use as tools to kind of build a life. But then in that gratitude, I started paying attention to everything around me that I could use. And that's when I was able to experience synchronicity, because it was almost like I was meditating as I was walking,
mm-hmm.
and everything just meshed. Like it just seemed limitless. So, like, people think of meditation and you're just sitting there, but this was kind of all.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what you would call that.
Well, that synchronicity is really nice when it feels like the nature is working with you, not against you. Like even the subtle breeze that comes, it's for a reason. And that is a level of connection. So when oftentimes when somebody has an experience that is near death, where all of a sudden the gratitude for nature itself, meaning the breath that moves in and out of your body and the fact that you can feel the ground, starts to be stimulated. as such a depth of relationship that we begin to realize that that's our whole lifeline, is the environment that we have, to the point where there's no separation between the nature that's around us and the nature that's inside of us. And at that moment in time, we become enmeshed, like what you're saying. We become in tuned, and the vibration begins to match inner and outer. And that can last forever or for a precious period of time. But then all of the interconnectivity around us starts to make sense. And we are actually sitting at the center of all of that, moving in and out of it and orchestrating along with it. Now, how that connects to meditation is that the formal seated meditation is actually a tool to strengthen that bond between nature, inner and outer.
Good, that's it. That's all I have.
That's great. That's a very precious experience to have. I love that when that happens. Mm-hmm.
I think for me, a hesitation I had a lot early on starting to meditate was a fear that I always wasn't doing it right. And I couldn't calm down my mind, and and then you'd get discouraged. And I read something recently that was so encouraging, that was attempting to meditate is meditating.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just take the time to sit and to carve out that intention, the result isn't as important. And so if your mind continues to be busy, as long as you just keep gently trying to call it back, just the intention to do it will give you the benefit. And that was a very encouraging thought for me, if you have that busy brain. So I didn't know if that might help others.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, the body itself experiences the benefits of meditation even when the mind is moving. So the chemicals and the hormones and all of the relaxation which occurs from the body has a profound effect. The mind is actually second, because the mind is running on pathways that we've worked really well and strengthened. So to move it over takes time. So meditation is a journey, it's a path that starts at one point and then keeps moving on. And the effort within it is a very specific effort. Just like moving a piece of paper or a cup or any actual physical object, you have to move it very specifically to place it down into the next spot in order to clear the table or the path, which takes practice. Now the good thing is that when you close your eyes, that's who you are. As shocking as that may sound or be, but that's actually who you present to yourself and also to the world. All of that, whatever it is. And to become okay with that is profound legwork in developing the depths of meditation practice. It's necessary. So it's actually the first stage of meditation. Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Hello.
Nice pants.
Oh, thanks. Your favorite brand. Sorry here. Just a quick question. Might not be quick to answer, but so I just have a question in terms of sattva as a whole. And so we speak about this accountability in terms of answering the question, who are you and why are you here? So it's a two-part question. One being, how is that accountability intertwined into both? And then the second part of that question being, like, because as a teacher, it's hard to not encourage that accountability in your students, but just make them realize it is what you need to do. So what is not necessarily this secret formula, but what's like, what do you recommend in terms of how to explain how it all connects?
The practice itself, in relation to who are you, why you're here, and accountability. Through consistency. So actually, nothing needs to really be said. There's no real explanation that has to happen, other than connecting them to a question and then giving some background into how to use it. So if I ask, who am I, immediately I'm gaining some perspective. So who am I in relation to this environment here and now? Who am I in relation to you? And who am I in relation to the thoughts that I'm having around the experience? And that perspective is incredibly valuable. And then when we get caught up in an emotion, asking why you're here, or in a particular attitude, asking why you're here, is again a way of checking yourself into a place of realizing that, wait a minute, I am not that which I am experiencing. And then that's most of what needs to be explained, and then the rest is into a direct experience loop within that individual. So the consistency comes through you, if you were the teacher of that group, in applying that within yourself. It's a very subtle art. Like, nothing even really needs to be said until it is said. And that might sound funny, but it's not about again and again repeating. It's about appropriate time and space to re-engage or visit that concept of who are you and why you're here. And so we do that every time within the beginning of a practice. So setting an intention is based on who I am and why am I here, on the purest form. So when I make this intention, the same intention that I work with throughout the entire day, it is grounding me into that perspective that's necessary in order to work with my own mind. So that is like the housing station for that specific piece of instruction to become reconnected without too much pressure.
And so, like, these philosophies I've applied to my coaching style as well. Kind of just that self-inquiry method of what you're supposed to do, essentially. And for the young boys I coach, it's new for them. But also in the sense, how do I gauge? Because for some kids it just clicks and it's very natural. Like, you tell them what needs to be done and then it's learned. And then others, they just need that constant reminder.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to be saying the same thing every day, because one, I annoy myself when I do that, and two, I'm probably annoying the child as well. So what would you recommend as a solution for being able to remind, and maybe like what's a good time frame to be able to do that? Tough question, I know, I'm sorry.
That is not tough, but it's involved. It's a very involved question and answer, because it relates to an individual. And ideally, and it sounds like you treat people like individuals in their learning style when it comes to a technique or whatever it may be. But again, it's about teaching them something that they can do later, like when you're not there. So if it's a particular technique, using a volleyball or a way of blocking or whatever it may be, It's watching that individual and seeing what it is that they are attempting to do within the instruction. And then from there, where can you highlight their learning ability to keep just nudging them towards achieving the understanding. And that goes for coaching volleyball and also teaching yoga. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
So then it's like one word that you say that will make the difference. But again, it's how you say it and when you say it. So it's a psychology. Timing is everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Should we sit? Keeping the eyes closed, bring full deep breaths into the body. Keeping the eyes closed, bring your gaze into the space just there in front of you. Very slowly and gently allow the eyes to open. Quite potentially within that time spent sitting, you experienced it all. All the possibilities that could be, along with a growing discernment and will, which is building concentration. So if we just keep developing that, the meditation becomes stronger and stronger. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Really easy. There's really no gray. And the amazing thing is that you know. You know, you know, you know. That's the truth. So you know. So when in doubt, just surrender. If you ever forget that there's a floor, you just have to relax and, oh, there it is. I know that that sounds like a ridiculous analogy, but it's true. Just relax and, oh, there it is. Try it. Relax. Do you feel the floor? And then if I were to distract you real quick and you're listening to me now, relax. You feel the floor. And when you relax, you feel the floor differently than when you were just listening to me. There's a shift that happens. Now again, relax. Every single time you just simply surrender and relax, you feel the floor, but with greater detail. And it just keeps wearing it deeper and stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's the foundation of your direction. The only reason why you don't know is because maybe there's just all this other chatter happening. But innately it's built inside, so you just have to simply surrender. To surrender outside in one's life might be challenging because all of the variable and gray, but to surrender to your meditation is completely safe. So that's the best place to do it, to start, and then just let it express itself into every other moment of life. Accepting. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy your evening. Namaste.